Hello everyone, we'll welcome you here again to this week's webinar. This week we're going to talk about Clubface control. We want to thank our sponsors, Medicus Golf and Kick-Ax Golf, as well as Tiffany Green's Golf Club here in Kansas City, Missouri, where I work at. Last week we talked about the sweet spot path. That's the path the club head, or more specifically, the sweet spot is coming into the golf ball. The next thing we have to do is we have to control the club face, because that club face is going to dictate primarily where the golf ball starts, and then it will either go straight along the path or curve away from the path. Now, I've got a bunch of little things here I'm going to show you as we go through to give you some ideas. So we have to have two things in golf. I've got this rod set up here because I'm going to be directing the ball towards you. But a couple of things have to happen. It doesn't matter whether you draw it or fade it. You cannot have one ball starting at this location. This would be to my right as I'm looking at it, and one ball starting over here, because these will mean that they have to have a different amount of curve to get back to the target. So if I had an amount of curve to get this ball back to target, but yet I started over here, it wouldn't reach it. If I had this amount of curve to get this ball all the way back, if I started here, it would go all the way past the target. So we want to have a consistent starting line and a consistent amount of curve. So a couple of things that you can do before I get into these drills, there's a couple of ways you can monitor your club face. You can just take a simple tennis racket, and as you swing up and down going to impact, look and see where that racket is pointed. Okay, if that racket is laid up like this, you know that ball, as you can see here, is going way over to the right, and this ball is going to start way to the left because it's shut down. So you can also tape this onto a club, and you can do this with masking tape. Align that with the club face, make swings, because it's easier to monitor this tennis racket than it is that face. So I'll give you a pretty good drill to do that. You can also use, and I'll use this tool just to give you an example. As you can see, this has a white rod sticking out of it. So if I swung this down the sweet spot path, and this path is going to the right of this stick right now, if these were square, you can see how this face is pointing to the right, my right of that stick. That's where the ball is going to start. And if it's square to that path, it's just going to be a dead straight push. If I come into it and I open the face, now the ball is still going to start to the right, but much farther right. And now if I come in here and I over-rotate the face, now you can see how this is pointed left. So again, you have to change and you have to practice what you want to do with this club face. So I would take it up, come down to impact, point it to the right, point it slightly left, make it square to the path. Again, if you're swinging on this path, though, you have to have the face close to that path to get it back to target. So that's a couple of ways that you can do that. You can also just set up a shaft, and you want to put it farther out than I had this one. I had this one lined up with this golf ball. But put this out about 10 feet. Set up in a parallel stance to this line. Your golf ball will be on the same line as the white shaft. Hit 10 shots trying to start the ball to the right of the shaft. So if I want to start the ball to the right of the shaft, that means I'd have to point the face to the right. So there it went to the right. And I'll do one back to the left here. Let me back this up just a little bit here. Can't quite go through it the way I need to. And now if I want to make it go to the left of that, I just make sure the face is pointed left of it. So you don't have to have big swings. Just rehearse trying to control the initial direction. The initial direction, again, is primarily the club face. So try to hit shots to the right of the shaft, try to hit shots to the left of the shaft, and the only thing you're changing is what you're doing with the club face. So again, going back to the bigger tool here, I can make this tool go to the right, to the left, you just rehearse hitting these shots. Let me get over here where it belongs. To the right, or to the left, or actually just pretty square to it, right? This is about where I need to be lined up, okay? So here's the right angle one. The left angle one, that would be too much, and somewhere right in between those two. So you have to learn how to educate your hands so they provide feedback to the club. You can also take a pillow or a duffel bag, anything like that, and just set it up, and then make a backswing, come down to the bag, stop, hold it straight up, and see where the club face is. Is it straight up? Is it pointed slightly right? Is it pointed slightly left? So if you're having trouble, if you're trying to hit a draw for a right-handed player, your path needs to be farther right than your club face is pointing. So I would aim the club face where I want the ball to start out, which would be to the right of that stick. Now I make sure that my path, that's the club head, we talked about that last week, the sweet spot path, is farther right than the club face is pointing. So to hit a draw for a right-handed player, if the ball is drawing, no matter where it starts, you know your path is to the right of the face. For a right-handed player, if you're hitting a fade, the path is always to the left of the face. So that's how you can be self-diagnostic when you're out on the range hitting shots. Hit shots, read your ball flight. Where does the ball start? That's primarily club face. Did it curve? That's going to tell you whether your path was to the right or to the left of that club face. So there are any number of drills that you can do this with. And then if you really want to get creative, what I have a lot of my players do here is I will actually set up two shafts, just like that, and so it's a little gate. I will set the ball to where I'll usually set the ball on this far left one as I'm looking at it. If I want them to draw it, then I want the ball to be going through the gate this way. If I want them to fade it, I'll set the gate over here. So your attention span, or your attention gets really focused when you're trying to hit it through this real tight window. So again, club face control and sweet spot control are the primary factors for primary and mostly 100% of it in controlling where your golf ball goes. Because again, at the end of the day, no matter what you're doing with your body, no matter what you're doing with everything else, you have to control the initial direction and the amount of the curve. So that is a club face control, and that's also sweet spot path control. So again, I'll back this up just a little farther. All right, I'm going to get this ball. Hopefully you can see this. Get this ball start to the right, and I'm pretty square here. I'm going to get it start to the right, and that's all I'm trying to do. Get it started to the right. Again, if I want to start to the left, that means I have to play a fade. So here's a little question for you. If I want to draw the ball, where would I aim the club face? If I want to fade the ball, where would I aim the club face? So think about that for a minute. A lot of people think if you want to draw it, you need to set up with the club face closed. Well, if you set up with the club face closed, so to speak, then what's going to happen is your club face is actually pointing to the left of your target. And I'll hold it up here a little bit so you can see it. So if the club face determines primarily the initial direction, if I want to draw it, I certainly don't want to start the ball to the left of my target. I would want to point the face slightly to the right, and then make sure that my path was farther right than my face. Now if I wanted to fade it, I would aim the face at address slightly left where I want the ball to start, and then I would adjust my path by moving my stance from parallel to slightly left. Now the face is left, my path, where I dictated with my setup, is farther left from the face. Now when I make this swing, the ball is going to start left, curve back towards target. And you don't really have to close your stance or aim your stance to the right for the right-hand player to get a draw. You can do that. You can experiment with it. But the other piece that goes with that is if I want to draw it more, I'm going to move the ball back in my stance so that I get it farther back in this arc that's coming into the ball. If I want to fade it, I will move it forward so that the path is not so far to the right. So back for more draw, forward for more fade, point the face to the right, swing the path farther right for a draw, point the face left, set your body left, farther than the face, swing along that new path, that gets the ball starting left and curving back towards target. So do yourself a favor, go out and take this challenge. I call it your golf DNA. Set your pole up. From a square stance, I want you to make 10 swings, hit 10 shots, and try to start the ball to the right. Count how many of those 10 you did. Then set up, square again, and get 10 balls started to the left. Now don't worry about the curve at this point because you're working on start line. Now from both of those shots you had 10 right and 10 left. Which one was easiest for you to control? That means that's your golf DNA. So you may be a fader, you may be a drawer, it doesn't really matter. Go with your golf DNA and you'll play much better golf. I want to thank you all for coming out. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you again soon.